Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So glad you're all here. This is exciting. The science of mind is a most wonderful teaching, which, when practiced, and that's the key word, practiced to its fullest extent, leads us to a life rich in meaning, love, peace, joy, and harmony. But there is both an art and a science to that practice. So during this entire month, we will be exploring and how to apply both the art and the science of spiritual living to what is going on in our lives today. And in order to fully engage in spiritual living, we must first be awake. And I don't mean physically awake, although that helps, but rather I mean being spiritually awake, awake to a higher truth of any experience that we may be having. And second, be aware of whatever changes may need to be made to our current conditions, systems, ways of thinking, doing, being, etc. And also to be willing to make them or to stand for those changes. So being both awake to higher truth and aware of what needs to change in our physical world can sometimes feel like we're walking a very delicate line. But to walk it effectively, there is an art and a science to it. So today we began to walk by one, looking at what it means to be awake, and two, looking at what it means to be aware, and three, putting them together to see how that leads us to fully engage in spiritual living. So let's begin by looking at what it means to be awake. So millennia ago, there was a man who had a powerful message for the world, and kings bowed down to him, and people couldn't get their heads around this being. So they came to him and they asked him, "Who are you?" Or they did not ask him, "Who are you?" They asked him, "What are you? What are you? Are you God?" they asked, and he answered, "No." "Are you an angel?" they asked. "No," he replied. "Well then, what are you?" To this question, he simply said, "I am awake." His answer became the name by which he would be known throughout time, for awake is what the word Buddha means. That's a literal definition of what the word Buddha means. So Buddhism, a religion practiced by millions of people across our globe, began with a man who first woke up. The shift is waiting to take place in humankind, in all of us. And it can only happen when we also wake up. And to what is it that we need to awaken? We need to awaken to a higher truth. Capital H, capital T, higher truth. Awaken to a higher truth that any experience that we may be having, we must first awaken to the fact that there is so much more going on than meets the eye. We must be awake to the idea that whatever is going on, whatever the experience is, God's infinite presence is right in the middle of it. Right in the middle of whatever it is we are experiencing it. And that's Emma Curtis Hopkins, where she said, "This too is good, this too is God, and I demand to see the blessing." That's what she would say in any circumstance that was causing her an issue. So a modern New Thought mystic who made his transition into the next dimension only a few years ago, this is Walter Starkey. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Walter Starkey. He wrote a book, you should be, because we've taken a class on his book, and it's called It's All God. Okay? He addressed the issue of being spiritually awake to the higher truths, and he talked about this just in a beautiful way in his book. So when I read a particular passage in it, it helped me to tremendously come to a deeper clarity and understanding, and it helped me awaken, as so many of the books that we read do when we do our book studies. So I wanted to share some of those words with you this morning. So he wrote in It's All God, he said, "As long as we judge in terms of good and bad, we have to perform some pretty fancy mental footwork when we try to make what we see with our eyes conform to a belief that God or Spirit is always loving, omnipotent, the only power. God or Spirit is indeed the only power because Spirit is the only cause. But just as the dark only exists in the absence of light, Spirit can appear to be destructive or creative depending on how we judge appearances. In order to understand God as the spirit of love, we have to believe that there is a divine plan at work that is beyond human intellectual understanding. No matter how appearances seem to be, love is the only spirit or presence. This is where double thinking is required. It is insulting to our intellect to see our inhumanity to one another or the unequal circumstances we are born into and say there is no wrong. At the level of appearances, wrong does exist and needs to be dealt with. However, we must simultaneously realize that there is another level at which God or Spirit is the first and only cause. When that level is realized, the hypnotism of duality is broken and appearances are healed in seemingly miraculous ways. He goes on to write, "Personally, I remember the exact moment when this metaphysical or mystical truth broke into my consciousness. I'd been studying with the mystic Joel Goldsmith for some years when one day I finally confronted him. I said, 'Joel, if you tell me that sickness, poverty, and such are not powers at some spiritual level, all right. But to me as a human being, they are powers.' He answered, 'Precisely, and if you want to stay at a human level, a human being under those laws, help yourself, but you don't have to.' At that moment, I saw that it was up to me. If I allow my spirit to be negative and destructive, that is the law I am creating for myself, but it doesn't have to be. I do not have to be a victim of either ignorance or the spirit of negativity. I can wake up. It is my choice." So just as Joel Goldsmith helped Starkey to wake up, so did Starkey help me to wake up. And now this morning, it is truly my deep prayer that I can assist you in doing the same. I can wake up. It is my choice. It is a choice to wake up to a higher truth that really is all God in any moment. In Rabbi David Cooper's book, God is a Verb, he writes, "One of the primary texts of the Kabbalah cries out to humankind saying, 'You beings on earth who are in deep slumber, awaken.' It pleads with us, stop sleeping, wake up, what are you waiting for?" And Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind says, "We can sit in the shadow or move into the sunshine. Sitting in the shadow, we may not really believe that there is any sunshine, but the sun would be there all the time, and all the time that we are in bondage, the real freedom exists. It is there, but we must awaken to it." Waking up to this truth is definitely an art, because in our world that is ruled by the five senses, this doesn't make any sense. But when does art have to make sense, right? That's the beauty of it, isn't it? So today, let's wake up. Let's wake up to this truth. Okay? So we're going to do that. Today we're going to wake up to this truth. So next, let's look at what it means to be aware. Millennia ago, a rich, pampered, sheltered, wealthy man by the name of Siddhartha Gautama awoke and became the Buddha because he became aware of suffering, of poverty, and of sickness. And he wanted to do something to alleviate these human conditions. It is now our time to become aware of conditions that must be alleviated. So I love Edwene Gaines. Who's read Edwene Gaines? All right. She has amazing wisdom on this topic. She says, in order to live on purpose, we must become aware of an issue, problem, concern that we are absolutely passionate about fixing, solving, or rectifying. Okay? And then get about doing just that. While at exactly the same time, this is important, realizing that there is absolutely nothing that needs to be fixed, solved, or rectified. Okay, this is being aware of the condition while being awake to the truth. It seems paradoxical and even inconsistent with those steeped in the law of attraction may even say that if we focus on what needs to be changed, we create more of that which needs to be changed. And I get that. I get that because the law of attraction is very powerful. But I believe we have a responsibility as fellow travelers on this planet to support one another and to care for one another. So we become aware of something that needs to be changed at the human level. And then we stand in the truth about it and we work toward the truth, not wallow in the mire of the condition. I think that it's where we can get, and this is where we can really get into spiritual trouble sometimes, if you will. Because it's fairly easy, I know we've all been there, to get mesmerized by the condition, right? And we want to stay there rather than using the condition to simply identify what our work needs to be. Abraham talks about the importance of contrast, it versus not it, right? Sometimes we need to experience the not it so that we can get really clear about the it. Perspective is an amazing gift. I keep saying that. So finally for today, we're going to look into how to put into action being awake and aware. So I want you to pause for a moment. Bless you. I want you to pause for a moment, and I ask you to think about your life right now. Think about your life right now. Is there a circumstance, a condition, an experience in your life or in the world at large that you are aware of that is a not it that is causing you concern? Is there something happening that may be keeping you up at night, or that takes up a lot of space between your ears with concern, worry, or fear? If so, just know that it is part of our human experience. Just in this moment, be aware of it. Just be aware of what it is, no judgment. And now bring to that situation an awakened state. Awake to the realization of a higher truth going on right in the middle of it. Do we have something? Okay, so talk to me. Did anybody come up with something that they want to share? Something that is apparent in their life that they can bring a higher truth to?
I was just thinking about the highway. That it's a situation, and as with the cleanup idea for us as a community to help clean up, and that the highway, you clean up the clutter and then people throw things out their window again, maybe at you. So you go back and you clean it up or get another highway.
We had bicyclists going, woohoo, great job, as we were doing it. That was good.
So it's part of the human condition, but
yeah,
to a higher belief or understanding.
But when we go to other states, we went through, the story I always tell is, we drove from Williamsburg, Virginia to Richmond, Virginia, which is probably over 125 miles, and we saw no litter
at all.
on the road.
Yeah, so we can know that. We can know that as our truth for our highways too.
What's true here isn't.
But let's look at what about the political scene right now. If you want to be mired into something, right? We awake. We become aware of that, but we bring a higher truth to that. We can know that everything is unfolding for the highest and best good, and that the appearances and conditions are, they're just the human conditions. We bring a higher truth to that. So that's on a global level. We can do that with poverty, with starving people. We can do it with the Zika virus. Anything that is out there that brings us concern, that is human, man, we can bring a higher truth, a higher awareness to this.
Chris, it reminds me of the difference of form versus essence.
Yes.
So it's very easy to get caught up in form, the surface, this body.
The effect.
The effect.
We're bringing it back to cause.
The essence is cause.
Exactly. Perfect. So these are tools that it's just a reframing how we look at something. We know that when we became aware to these, or awake to these higher truths, and bring them to the situations that we are aware of, then the situations must change. They can't help but change. When we change our perception, when we change our consciousness, the situations themselves actually change. This is the science of our work, or as Mary Morrissey says, she likes to say, it's physics, not philosophy. It's physics. And when we awaken to these higher truths, we not only support our transformation, but we support the transformation of the human collective consciousness. This is the exciting part of our work, because we don't just affect ourselves when we make a change in our minds. We're affecting everybody, all of humankind. I love the words of Dennis Merritt Jones in The Art of Being. He writes, life really is a stream into which we pour our beliefs, and all of those who come after us will be the direct beneficiaries of what we believe. The great thing is that with this awareness comes choice. As we awaken to the fact that we don't necessarily have to pass on beliefs that have not served us or others well, we can choose to eliminate them from the legacy we pass on. The real question is, who is it that lies downstream from you from this moment forward? It's never too late to change your legacy and gifts to future generations. And oh my, that's powerful. Because I can think of a lot of things that were passed down or just, accepted as truth that are not my truth. And I've actually worked with Joy to disentangle from a lot of those because they you don't even realize that they are playing a role in your existence until,
Running in the background.
Running is, it's kind of like the tape that's running in the back, or the movie projector that just goes on and on and on, and then suddenly it's gone. So, but here's the really cool thing. We don't have to be, this is actually very, very cool. We don't have to be fully and completely awake and aware ourselves in order to help humanity awaken.
Yay.
We don't have to be we don't have to be complete to get this done, right? So how many of you went to summer camp as a kid? Yeah, and slept in a room, with a bunch of bunk beds, right? A lot of us had that experience. Well, imagine that you were in charge of getting everybody up at 6 a.m. in the morning. So you set your alarm. And it rings at 6 o'clock in the morning, and being a pretty sound sleeper, you wake up, but just barely. But enough to get every one of your bunkmates out of bed. So you weren't completely awake when you did this, but you were just a little more awake than they were. And that's all we have to do. We just have to be just a little more awake to make a difference. That's all it takes to have a huge impact on the consciousness of humanity. Isn't that great? I think that sounds pretty good. Be just a little more awake. Or you can consider it like this. What happens when you strike a match? There's that critical point when just enough friction occurs to cause the spark to spring forth. Or sometimes with us, many of them as they break, but that's another story. And then, that friction and the fire that wasn't there the moment to burn brightly in front of you. It's the same with humankind as we move into a new era of consciousness. And we're moving into a new era of consciousness. We are moving out of the competitive era and into the creative era, where we're no longer competing for limited resources, but realizing that we have an abundance and that there's enough for everyone. We just have to get creative about it and figure out and use our God-given creative talents to do it. It's pretty darned exciting. And it just takes enough of us to wake up and be aware of the innate desire to live in a world of peace and freedom and joy. And it will happen in an instant. That critical mass, it'll happen. One moment we may still be shuffling through the shadows, and then suddenly in the next moment, one inspired person breaks a lifelong pattern and opens up to higher truths. And with this simple act, the entire human race reaches that critical point. A spark of light flickers, then bursts into flame, heralding a life that we all deserve to live. And that person could be you. That person could be you. How many of you are familiar with the Vision Alignment Project? Anybody familiar with that? Well, I'm going to introduce that to you. It's called the visionalignmentproject.com. That's it, visionalignmentproject.com. You can go and sign up. It's a powerful tool for people who come together to awaken, because we know wherever two or more are gathered, there's a huge amount of power, right? And so these people are coming together to awaken to higher truths in the context of an awareness of current circumstances in our world. They have almost 2 million people who align with their daily visions. 2 million people. Imagine the strength in that. So if you are interested, sign up. They'll send you emails. You can connect. It's a great, see me afterwards. Visionalignmentproject.com. It's really cool. It's a worthwhile project to put your energy into and join with others, because it does. 1 plus 1 is not 2 in these instances. It really is exponential. Right. So I want to close our time together today and have a closing prayer, which is an offering from the Vision Alignment Project, and it's called A Vision for the Human Spirit. So please take a deep breath and close your eyes and become aware to these words and awake to these words. We see a world where the human spirit is blossoming in every land, in every relationship, in every business, in every home, in every heart and mind. We see a world where people have rediscovered the joys of life, where life itself has become easier, more playful, and where we flock to help one another when help is needed. We see smiles in every direction because all humanity's burdens and debts have been lifted and put away forever. We see people excited about life, excited about their work and projects, excited about their homes, families, and communities, excited about the bright future that comes to those who really help and care for their fellow men and women. And above all, we see something happening that hasn't happened here for ages. Our spirits are shining, just the way they were meant to shine from the time they set foot in this beautiful, blessed realm. We see a world where humanity as a whole has risen above all of the mundane dramas, scenarios, and realities that no longer serve us, where we have seen the light of a new day, wherein we now know that our wisest, most productive, most joyful course of action in all situations is to love each other, to serve one another, and to see everyone in their highest light. Thus, by this new course of action, we have, en masse, created peace, happiness, comfort, and safety for ourselves and for all living things who inhabit this earth. We all go there together. That is our intention for the highest good of all. And so it is.